don't leave things to chance. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. But the most important thing there that I'm hearing from your dad, and this is like more like an old guy thing, I think. Cause I'm getting to be an old guy now. So it's like a lot of this stuff kind of,
Yeah.
like it comes to fruition for me too, is the drop of ego. I'm going to drop my poundage because it's going to make this shot easier for me. Right. Yeah. Like, that was the important part. You know what I mean? That he wasn't hung up on like, how much am I pulling? He's hung up on like, how am I going to kill this deer? What gives me the best chance to kill this deer, you know, or a deer, whatever it is. Right. And that is a lot of times, you know, I think, especially younger dudes, you know, are hell bent on, you know, worried about what this person thinks or that person thinks or whatever, what someone may think of them. And you should just do what it is you need to do to be successful. You know what I mean? It's like, and I see that a lot in like the jiu-jitsu room and stuff like that too. It's like, man, the guys that come in and don't have an ego, like, they're usually the best guys. Like, they get tapped, but like in the process of doing that, they're learning because they're playing, and they're expanding their game because they're willing to make some mistakes to add new tricks to their bag. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's the same thing I feel like in bow hunting. It's like, if you just lose the ego a little bit and maybe drop the poundage on your bow, or maybe just, you know, give into the idea that maybe you don't know as much as you think you do, and maybe you should seek some advice from somebody who does or whatever. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of like you being very self-aware of what you need and where you're at, and like where your holes are and where your weaknesses are and stuff like that. Like, that's a sign of like someone who's going to be really, really good. You know what I mean? Or someone who wants to get better. Right. And doesn't have to always be right, or doesn't have to be the man, or whatever the case is. Like, that I think is key. Cause dude, I don't know how many times I've reached out to guys to ask advice. Right. And after I killed that deer in Kansas, like, I've had plenty of buddies of mine who are by far better deer hunters than I am. Like, by far, like, in a way, better deer hunters than I am, that are getting ready to go to Kansas, that are like, hey man, can I give you a quick call? I have some questions about Kansas, you know, and just pick my brain about like what my experience was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these dudes are guys, some of them are like guys I put on a pedestal of like, these are some of the best deer hunters I've ever met. You know what I mean? And it's because they're always seeking that thing that helps them get a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have an ego. They don't care where the information comes from, you know? And that's cool when you see that in our community, you know. And I just think it would be cool, is like, if we, like, as we see more of it, like, plenty of people do it, you know. It's not saying that like there's a bunch of bad eggs or whatever, but you know, if there's a young guy out there listening and he's struggling with something, you know, whatever it happens to be, it's like, man, seek advice from someone who knows. You know what I mean? Like, don't let your ego be the reason why you continue to make the same mistakes.
Man, it's so true. Cause like you get in, and especially guys, like, that's just our nature to not want to ask for help, or feel like, oh, someone's going to look down on us for it. Like, I've learned that so much. Andy May is a great example of someone that he'll reach out to me from time to time and be like, oh, you know, I was listening to this podcast with your dad, and, you know, I have some questions on it. And like, he was diving in deeper, and it's like, Andy doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't need any help. Like, Andy's got it figured out, but like, he'll be like, oh, I'd love to come hunt PA with you guys sometime and just learn. And like, I'm just like, that's, you know, why he's so good at what he does. Not the only reason, but like, he's willing to learn and willing to hear out other people and understand it. And that's such a good point in what you said there, is the ego side of it. And we all can get that. I think it's the important part, is being able to catch it when we're starting to act that way, and figure out what to do with it.
Well, it's the self-awareness. You know what I mean? Like, that's where it starts. It's like, until you recognize, you know, and can be honest in evaluation of like, you know, what your skills are and where the holes are, you know, until you drop your ego enough to do that. And it's like, when you are able to do that, that's whenever you then, you know, seek to fill those holes and try to find means to do that, whether it's like doing it on your own and doing some development, or whether that's, you know, seeking people who have been there, done that, and getting some advice, you know. And I've never met anybody good at anything who wasn't self-aware. And the reason they got really good at the thing that they did was because they were self-aware, and they sought advice and counsel on how to fill those holes, to fill the gaps that they had.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean you have to fill every gap. Like, there's plenty of holes that I have still in like my hunting game. Got a ton of them. some of them are just things of like where it's just not as, it's not worth, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's the benefit to me, because that aspect of my game probably will never be great. I'm probably better off letting it be where it's at and developing other areas that I can actually be really, really good in. You know what I mean? And so that's more what my focus is. And like really what my focus has been now for probably like the past 2 years and continuing this year. And I think that'll be something that I do like the rest of my life, most likely, is trying to figure out and find ways to just enrich the experience. Like everything else be damned. It's like, I'm just trying to figure out how to enrich the experience. And that's, partially why it's like I'm making, like why I'm shooting a traditional bow now. It's like not because it's cool, not because it's harder. I don't need deer hunting to be any harder than it is. Like it's hard enough for me. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not that, I promise you that. I don't walk into the woods and be like, man, this shit's easy. It's like, no,
I got this all figured out.
Yeah.